They say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from someone you trust. For me, it came dressed in academia, with applause echoing in my ears and the sting of humiliation buried beneath polite claps and careful smiles. My name is Malcolm Finch. I'm 57 years old. I live in Evanston, Illinois, and I've spent the last 23 years teaching and researching at a university most people can't get into unless they're either brilliant or lucky. I used to think I was both. The day started like any other. I stood in front of the mirror in my office, straightening my tie for the third time. Nervous energy buzzed beneath my skin. Today wasn't just another symposium. It was my symposium, my lab, my findings, my moment. Across the room, Serena Vale sat cross-legged on the windowsill, eyes flicking between her tablet and the view. "You sure you want to lead with the neural cascade segment?" she asked, her voice cool, neutral. "I've spent 6 years on that segment," I replied. "It's the heart of the presentation." She nodded slowly, as if indulging me. I didn't notice it at the time, not really, but she didn't look excited, not even nervous. Just indifferent. Serena had been my grad student once, then a co-author, then the kind of collaborator who starts showing up in interviews and getting quoted in articles. I thought we were a team, or maybe I just needed to believe we were. The symposium was packed. People from around the country had flown in. Industry heads, government advisors, former students. The energy was electric. And then Serena walked out on stage in a red satin blouse that shimmered under the lights. The same one she wore 5 years ago at our first conference together, back when she was still introducing me as her mentor. The choice felt deliberate, provocative. She took the podium and began speaking before I could even stand. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to present groundbreaking research in neurochemical cascade dynamics, work I've developed over the past several years, now in collaboration with a dear friend and mentor of mine, Dr. Leon Graham." I froze. Leon Graham. That name shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. Leon was my rival in every sense. He once tried to poach one of my postdocs with an overseas grant. We hadn't spoken in years. And now, there he was, striding across the stage like he owned it, smiling like a wolf in a dinner jacket. He stood beside Serena, nodding graciously as the crowd applauded. I waited to hear my name. A sentence. A nod. Anything. It never came. Slide after slide lit up behind them, my slides. Diagrams I had drawn. Data I had collected. They presented it all as their own joint work, with my name absent from every credit. Serena glanced at me just once from the stage, expression unreadable. People around me whispered, some casting confused glances in my direction. I sat, motionless, hands folded tightly in my lap. I should have stood up. I should have interrupted. But I didn't. I stayed rooted in my seat, watching as my life's work was paraded across the screen under someone else's name. When it was over, people stood to clap. I didn't. The applause had barely faded before I was on my feet, weaving through the crowd of academics and investors, half-heard congratulations and business cards shoved at me like pity scraps. I didn't know exactly what I was going to say. I just knew I had to say something. Anything. I found Serena in the hallway just outside the lecture hall, tucked into a corner with a flute of champagne and a smirk that made my stomach twist. She wasn't alone. Leon stood beside her, whispering something in her ear. They laughed like old friends. Like conspirators. "Serena," I said. My voice came out rougher than I expected. "We need to talk." She turned slowly, smile never quite reaching her eyes. "Malcolm," she said coolly. "Quite the turnout, don't you think?" "You presented my work without credit," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "You didn't mention my name once." Leon chuckled beside her. "Malcolm, please. We built on your foundation, sure, but it's evolved since then. What we shared today was collaborative." "Collaborative?" I repeated. "You cherry-picked findings from my unpublished notes. You stripped out my models, my sourcing. I didn't give permission." Serena tilted her head. "You've been sitting on those results for years. You had the data, but no momentum. No direction." I stared at her, stunned. "You think that justifies theft?" She gave a casual shrug. "I think science moves forward with bold decisions." Leon stepped forward, voice all performative sympathy. "Face it, Malcolm. The field is changing. You've been stagnant. Brilliant, sure, but slow. Serena wants to make an impact. We all do." I felt it building in my chest. Rage, humiliation, grief all tangled into a single impulse. I looked at Leon, at the smug crease of his blazer, the arrogance in his posture, and I snapped. I shoved him. It wasn't hard, but enough to catch him off balance. He stumbled back into the wall with a surprised grunt. A couple of students nearby gasped. One of them fumbled with their phone. Security appeared almost instantly. Two men in blazers, eyes scanning the scene like they'd seen this kind of thing before. "Sir, we need you to come with us." Serena didn't flinch. She just sipped her champagne and watched me like I was a lab rat acting out of turn. Leon straightened his jacket, breathing hard. "You're just a footnote now, Malcolm." That one landed. I let the security guards escort me away, my heart pounding, vision tight. Behind me, the crowd resumed its hum. Nobody followed. Nobody intervened. Except Serena. She didn't follow either. She just watched me go bored. The university put me on administrative leave the next morning. No warning. No meeting. Just an email stamped with a cold line. Pending investigation into unprofessional conduct at the Symposium for Advanced Biochemistry. Neat and clinical. The same way they'd announced the cancellation of a seminar or the closing of a lab wing for maintenance. I sat at my desk staring at the message, the coffee in my hand going cold. My office, once filled with foot traffic from eager undergrads and postdocs, was silent. Nobody dropped by to check on me. Not a single colleague sent a message of support. But they all knew. The footage of me shoving Leon had already made its rounds online. One clip had over 20,000 views by noon, posted with the caption, "Disgraced professor snaps at his own event." The comments weren't kind. This is what happens when old academics can't keep up. Tenure isn't a license for tantrums. Yikes. And I wanted to study under this guy. I closed the browser. The worst part wasn't the ridicule. It was the silence. People I'd mentored, co-authored with, eaten stale muffins next to during endless faculty meetings, they all vanished. Ghosted me like I was contagious. Only the lab remained. Mine, but only technically. The door was still unlocked. The equipment still carried my initials in tiny silver engravings. But it felt like trespassing when I walked in that Friday night. That's when I found the drive. It was tucked inside an old cabinet behind a stack of outdated enzyme kits. A flash drive. Black, scratched, forgotten. But I remembered it. Serena and I had used it during our first round of simulations. We'd saved everything to it, raw models, draft notes, side observations not ready for publication. I'd assumed it was lost when we transitioned to cloud storage. I plugged it into my laptop. It was all there. But that wasn't the surprise. The surprise was a folder I didn't recognize, buried inside the master directory, labeled references_alt. I clicked it open. Emails. Hundreds of them. Between Serena and Leon. Some dated over a year ago. I read them one after another, a slow sickness crawling up my spine. From Serena Vale. "He's brilliant, but he never pushes. He's still afraid of being wrong. It's like watching someone build a rocket and refuse to launch it." From Leon Graham. "Perfect. Let him do the heavy lifting. When it's ready, we strike." From Serena Vale. "I've already started rewriting the intro to reflect our perspective. He won't even notice until it's too late." Mockery. Strategy. Calculated erasure. They didn't just steal my work. They groomed it. Groomed me. Every moment of doubt I'd ever expressed, every time I'd paused a submission or asked for peer feedback, they'd logged it like leverage. I sat back, heart hammering. It had never been an accident. Not a misunderstanding. Not even ambition run amok. It was a coup. I didn't sleep that night. I read every email, flagged every attachment, organized them into chronological folders like I was building a case file, because I was. By sunrise, I had over 150 pages of documented betrayal, including their plans to republish under their own names. It wasn't just unethical. It was fraud. That morning, I called a lawyer. Her name was Angela Yuan. She was younger than me, sharp-eyed, and didn't blink once as I explained everything over Zoom. I sent her the drive. She called me back less than an hour later. "You have a solid case," she said, her voice flat but firm. "Academic misappropriation. Intellectual property theft. Possible breach of funding contracts if they received grants under falsified authorship." I stared at the screen. "So what do? We start by sending a cease and desist. Then we initiate copyright claims for any work using your data. If they respond with arrogance, which, from the tone of those emails, I fully expect, they'll walk straight into litigation." Her confidence steadied me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't spiraling. That same afternoon, I drove out to the edge of campus where the university archives stored our old lab backups. Most people didn't even know the place existed, a quiet, climate-controlled storage facility run by two librarians who were always thrilled when someone remembered they were alive. I found records going back nearly 8 years. Lab notebooks with my handwriting. Early stage drafts with timestamps. Video clips of whiteboard sessions with my voice narrating as Serena stood off camera asking questions. All proof. Still, I knew documentation alone wouldn't turn the tide. I needed people. Allies. So I made calls. I reached out to Kyle Torres, a former PhD student of mine now working in Boston. Then Dina Feldman, who co-authored a paper with me 3 years ago. Then Oliver Cho, who had worked closely with Serena before she shifted focus. I sent them copies of the emails, the presentation slides, the timeline. Most were stunned. A few had suspected something was off for a while. Only one reply made me stop and reread it. From Kyle Torres. I always thought something felt, rehearsed about her praise for Graham. I'll help. Whatever you need. The cease and desist went out the next day. Angela sent me a copy. Formal, direct, razor sharp. 3 hours later, I got a reply from Serena. No apology. No explanation. Just a single sentence. We'll see who they believe. Serena missed her panel in Berlin. That was the first real crack. It was supposed to be the kickoff of their European tour. Leon had posted about it everywhere, calling it a bold step in next-gen biochemical disruption. But when the session started, only Leon walked onto the stage. No Serena. No explanation. Just a vague apology and a rushed solo presentation that barely covered half the scheduled time. People noticed, especially the ones in my inbox. A former student messaged me that night. Did you see the live stream? Graham looked like he was trying to sell a parachute while the plane was already on fire. I didn't respond. Instead, I kept my focus on the small but steady stream of momentum building behind the scenes. Kyle published a detailed blog post outlining his experience working in my lab, how Serena had slowly taken control of projects she hadn't initiated, how she always redirected credit subtly but intentionally. The post didn't name her outright, but everyone in our circle knew who it was about. It went semi-viral in academic Twitter spaces. One particularly sharp quote stood out. Great scientists reflect light. They don't steal it. Comments flooded in. Some were skeptical. Others shared similar stories, either about Serena or Leon, or the broader culture of academia where ambition often wore the mask of collaboration. And just like that, the narrative began to shift. Serena had built her image carefully, graceful, poised, brilliant. But when people looked closer, there were gaps. Odd inconsistencies in her citations. Passive language in her acknowledgments. Instances where people remembered her being involved, but not leading. The whispers turned into quiet conversations behind closed doors. A department head reached out to Angela with questions. A grant administrator requested clarification on a funding proposal that Serena had filed jointly with Leon, but using work traceable to my prior research. Leon, in his usual polished arrogance, tried to control the bleeding. He gave interviews, posted clips of himself in various labs, spoke grandly about vision and momentum. But he was talking alone now. And the more he talked, the more transparent it became. He wasn't a pioneer. He was an opportunist in a borrowed lab coat. Serena, once the star pupil, was fading. Not because I shouted, because I waited. And the silence did the work for me. The call came from an unlisted number. I almost didn't answer. But something in me, morbid curiosity, maybe, pressed accept. Malcolm, she said. Her voice was quieter than I remembered. Almost careful. Serena, I replied, flat. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, she began, but I'd like to meet. Talk. Just us. No lawyers. I didn't say yes. But an hour later, I watched her step into my small rented lab in the industrial park on the north end of Evanston. No glass walls. No research interns. Just metal shelves, a portable whiteboard, and the faint smell of cleaning alcohol. She looked tired. Less polished. Her signature blazer was replaced by a simple coat, her makeup softer. Like she'd come not to argue, but to ask. This is where you work now? She asked, glancing around. It's quiet, I said. No one steals anything here. She flinched, but didn't argue. There was a long silence. Then she sat down on the edge of the workbench and let out a long breath. I didn't think it would go this far, she said. Leon said the backlash would blow over. That people always get jealous of success. Jealous, I repeated, dry. I'm not defending it, she added quickly. Just explaining what I was told. What I wanted to believe. She stared down at her hands. Polished nails. Same nervous tick, tapping her thumbs together. I let it get out of hand. I got caught up. The attention, The offers, the travel, Leon made it all seem bigger than it was. Like I had to move fast or be left behind. I didn't mean for it to turn into a war. You didn't mean to get caught, I corrected. She looked up at me, surprised. I trusted you, I said. Not just with the work. With everything. My lab. My reputation. I thought you were the future. She blinked, and I saw the tears behind her eyes. But I didn't move. I am sorry, she said finally. I know that might not mean anything, but I am. I crossed my arms and looked at her carefully. No, I said. It doesn't mean anything. That stunned her. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I came to make it right, she whispered. No, you came because it's collapsing and Leon's gone quiet, I said calmly. You're not trying to fix this. You're trying to get ahead of it. Her face fell. You weren't lost, I said. You were hunting. You saw an opening, and you took it. I used to think that was ambition. Now I see it for what it is. What's that? She asked quietly. Predation. She didn't try to argue. Didn't cry. She just stood up slowly and nodded. Goodbye, Malcolm. And just like that, she was gone. No slammed doors. No shouting. Just footsteps fading down the hallway. And for the first time in years, I felt still. The lawsuit didn't make headlines. Academic fraud rarely does, especially when it's settled quietly. But I won. A modest settlement, enough to pay my legal fees twice over and fund the next year of my work. More importantly, the journal retracted the symposium paper and issued a correction. My name was reinstated on 3 published articles that had been altered during Serena's revision process. Leon never publicly commented. I heard he'd taken a sabbatical, which, in academic circles, is code for we're giving this time to blow over. Serena's fellowship application was withdrawn. A few months later, her university profile quietly vanished from the department's website. No scandal. No apology. Just digital erasure, quiet, neat, and complete. And I moved on. Not upward. Not back. Just forward. The new lab wasn't prestigious. It was 3 rooms rented in a converted warehouse near the lake. The landlord gave me a discount because her daughter remembered me from a freshman biology class I taught 10 years ago. Said I was the first professor who ever encouraged her to switch majors. I filled the space with what I could afford, 2 used microscopes, an aging centrifuge, and a whiteboard I bought at a garage sale. My office was a desk, a cracked mug, and a wall calendar stuck open to February. But it was mine. No grants. No politics. Just work. I didn't try to rebuild the old prestige. That part of my life felt like a coat that no longer fit. Instead, I partnered with an ethics-based research startup that focused on open access science and academic mentorship. No flash. No applause. But the work felt honest. Useful. I started mentoring again, grad students, yes, but also first years and high schoolers from underserved districts. Kids who had the curiosity but none of the connections. They reminded me of why I fell in love with this field in the first place, before the committees, the competition, the quiet betrayals in fluorescent-lit hallways. One Thursday, I was cataloging old field notes when I heard a knock on the lab door. A young man, maybe 19, maybe 20, stood there holding a printed article. I'm Thomas, he said. You don't know me, but I read about what happened. I'm applying for summer research programs. I was wondering if you might consider letting me work with you. I studied his face, nervous but sincere. Hopeful. I nodded slowly. Come in, I said. Let's talk. It was late, too late to still be in the lab, but I wasn't in a rush to go anywhere. A storm rolled in off Lake Michigan, wind rattling the windows as I sat alone at my desk, watching an old lecture video from 15 years ago. It was one of those grainy, university-recorded sessions with bad lighting and worse audio. I was younger in it, of course. Thinner. Faster talking. Still believing that knowledge alone could build bridges. In the clip, I was pacing the floor, waving my hands too much. Eyes lit up as I explained neural synchronization in bees. I laughed, genuinely, for the first time in a while. That guy, on the screen? He was idealistic, yes. Maybe even naive. But he cared. And somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten how good it felt to care without fear. I clicked pause. Then reached for the envelope I'd been adding to slowly over the past few weeks. Inside it were pages addressed simply. To my future students. It wasn't a manifesto. Not exactly. Just a letter. Honest. Plain. You'll meet people who shine just to blind you. Trust the ones who reflect. The ones who listen before speaking, who credit before claiming. Your work will be judged by your patience, not just your output. Be kind. Be rigorous. Be better than I was, especially when it gets hard. I signed it. Malcolm Finch. Still learning. As I sealed the envelope, my phone buzzed beside me. Another application. This one from a sophomore chemistry major named Layla. She'd attached a handwritten note scanned in as a PDF. I read about your lab in a student blog. You sound like the kind of scientist I want to be. I hope you're still accepting mints. I smiled. No applause. No symposium. No prestige. Just one student reaching out to another human being, saying, I see you. I typed back. Let's meet next week. Wednesday work for you? I shut off the lab lights and stepped into the night. Rain slicking the pavement, the smell of earth rising in the air. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel overshadowed. I didn't feel erased. I felt like myself. And that was more than enough.